It's 5 o'clock, so we'll call our meeting to order. It's Monday, March the 3rd, 2025, regular board meeting here at the central office. And if we'd all stand for the pledge, Mr. Evans will lead us.
Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the introduction of our members is Larkin Rippeth, Georgia West, Dr. Barker, Ed Evans, and Margaret Beavers, and Angie Robinette is absent tonight. The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of February the 20th, 2025, regular session. Do I have a motion? Motion by Margaret. Second by Larkin. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Abstention or no? Delegation of speakers. We have none. The next is discussion items, board members, reports and presentations, MOY benchmark, ELRS data. Amanda Payton, Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you all for letting me be with you tonight. And we're not going to go over the ELRS data because our teachers, we've got an extension on pre-K data. So we'll do that at a follow-up meeting because of all the snow days and then, of course, being out for the flood. But we did manage to get our iReady data, our middle of the year benchmark, completed before any of the events that took place on the 15th. So just to give you a recap, the reason that we adopted iReady was because the state said that we had to pick a benchmark testing platform that was approved by the state. We were doing Dibbles. Dibbles was approved by the state, but we wanted something to have some consistent data. I think right now there's 48 counties in the state of West Virginia that are using iReady. So we've got some really consistent data so we can see how we compare to our other counties. With the House Bill 3035, I know we've talked about it for years, but just to let you know, we benchmark 3 times a year, and we do an intervention plan after those. So I gave you a copy of that because I've not ever given you a copy before on what our teachers are doing. So the sheet that has the red, green, and yellow, the individualized intervention plan, this is a really important form that we do after each benchmark with every student that falls below the cut score. So if you come in and your teachers ask you to come in or to do an over the phone intervention plan meeting, we're doing this to let families know where their child's performing at that point in the year. And then on the back, we have a progress monitoring. So as they continue to show progress throughout the year, we're meeting with families. And what this is doing, it's letting our families know where their child's performing so that when we get to that 2026 school year that's quickly approaching and we have those third graders that are below the cut score, then families are not in shock and awe. And so we've been very clear, we've been very transparent. We've been asking them for their support throughout the process. These are the things we can ask you to do at home. These are the things that we're doing at school. Of course, attendance plays a huge role in that. So in that intervention meeting, we're giving them all the data. We're telling them everything that we're doing. And then we're also setting goals with families so that we can try to get them on track so that if everything holds true, that we don't have to hold those third graders back. So this was one of the measures that was approved by the state. And one thing that we're also have added on is we're meeting with the State Department monthly. They come down for reading and mathematics, and they're looking at everything that we're doing and supporting and really favorable of everything that we have going on. Just to let you know, how do we track students for trend data? And I know this is kind of blurry, but I just wanted you to see the kind of overall picture on how data informed that we are. So we're tracking, this was our kindergarten students. This year is first graders, and we'll continue next year as second graders, and then the year after as third graders. So we can watch their performance, and we're tracking oranges to oranges instead of looking at our kindergarten last year and then this year, because those are different students. So we're looking to see if there's improvement. We're also tracking their attendance now. I don't think there's any other county in the state that was doing this until we shared our spreadsheet. Just for an example, excuse me, Walter, in first grade, At the beginning of the year, we had 12.5% of our students that were below the cut score were chronically absent. In the middle of the year, it's 80% of those students in first grade are chronically absent that are below the cut score. So it just shows a clear comparison of attendance in regards to academic achievement. So we've been sharing this with the state and really diving in. Now Dr. East has got another layer, and she's wanting us to dig into also those students that are students with disabilities, so we can track that out as well and look at our data. The other sheet that I gave you, I put 25, 26. I got ahead of myself at the top of that chart. 24, 25. House bill data. I guess I had 26 in my mind. And so if you look at in the first chart, that's a raw number of students that are below the cut score. Green is ELA, blue is mathematics. And then I have the whole student count, and then we have the number that's chronically absent, and then the percentage of those numbers that are chronically absent. So you can see in third grade in ELA, we have 86 students right now that are below the cut score. 55% of those that are below are actually chronically absent students. The raw number is 47, but 55%. So now we have to, when we meet with families and we go back to this plan, we pull out their chronic absenteeism and we talk about that data with them, that if they're not here, we can't teach an empty seat. And then that really hits home when we start talking about the retention of those when they get to be third grade. So that's just so we pulled this data from this chart so that all of our schools are completing this for reading and for mathematics. They're pulling in the chronic absenteeism data, and that allows us to pull this together for the district. We shared this with the state as well when they came down last, or January, whatever month that it was. I don't remember at this point. So just to remind you that we're pushing chronic absenteeism, and then I know Ms. White in her office working really hard to get us certified teachers. So we've kind of got all of the pieces there, and we're tracking also the students and then how many vacant subs that they've had and different substitutes that they've had, and we're trying really to get in deep into the data. So just as a reminder from the last time when we did this for the beginning of the year, this is the pyramid you want. You want to see 80 to 90% in your tier 1, which means that's our core instruction. Everyone's receiving it. We can be really preventative and proactive in our measures for academics and behavioral intervention, but everyone's getting the green. We only really want to see 5 to 10% in tier 2. Like, that's optimal. That would mean some students would be in that group, and we would have a really rapid response to whatever intervention that we put into place. And in a perfect world, you'd have 1 to 5% in the tip of your pyramid. That would be our tier 3 students, where it has to be really high intensity, lots of rapidness, and lots of repetitiveness, really explicit instruction. So that's what we would ultimately want to see. Here's from Diagnostic 1 when I met with you before, and here's in Diagnostic 2 for the middle of the year. So if you go back and just look at the red tip, we want 1 to 5% overall, and you can see we have 37% in the tip of our pyramid. So we still have a lot of work to do. Now, mind you, this is K through 8 data. So when we had K through 3, our pyramid looked a lot better. But when we started bunching all of the middle school students and everyone into our same pyramid for reading improvement, that's why we see the red part of the pyramid has gotten larger. But we do see growth from Diagnostic 1 to Diagnostic 2. We went from 17% to 30%, and that's on grade level students, from 39 to 33, so we're shrinking our yellow band, and we went from 44 to 37 in our red band. So those students just moved down to tier 2, and then some of the tier 2 moved down to tier 1. So individually, we broke that out to look at students. Again, we went from overall on level 17 to 30%, from beginning of the year benchmark to middle of the year benchmark. This is for reading. I also broke it down to look at the domains. Again, the gray railroad track means that those students have off-tested. They're no longer doing assessments on phonological awareness. So either their grade level, it's beyond their grade level, or they've already surpassed that. So we're not even assessing that for a lot of students anymore. So the growth number that I put there for you was I added the 2 bands of green, which means they were above grade level or on grade level. So we went from 10 to 19% on phonemic awareness and phonological awareness, 50 to 63% on phonics. And by the end of the year, this will be almost complete. Every year, our phonics instruction, we hit it, knock it out of the park. So we have almost all of our students. And last year, every student that was not on level in phonics was a special needs student. High frequency words, a lot better this year than where we were last year. I think it's because of our teachers. They're really focusing on a method called the heart word method. No longer are we flashing cards. We have new research that says that's not working, that we need to sound out the parts of the words that are phonetically correct. So now went from 68 to 75%. If you remember last time I told you that overall comp, including vocabulary, we're so low on, and these are the pieces for comprehension we've got to increase. And we're putting science and social studies back, and we are seeing increases. 23 to 30% on vocabulary growth, overall comp 19 to 31%, lit 22 to 33%, and 10% in informational. Our kindergartners are knocking it out of the park. They had the highest growth. They went from 18 to 67% from benchmark 1 to benchmark 2. And you would think, well, kindergarten probably didn't have that many skills coming in, and that's true, but the test is made for their developmental level. So they have just really, a lot of them are beyond grade level in kindergarten. So we're really proud of that, and Dr. Barker and I we're planning something a little special for kindergarten. First grade, you can see, I won't read you all the numbers, but you can see their growth on to second and third grade. And then in fourth grade and fifth grade, sixth grade is a troublesome grade, and seventh. So Dr. Barker and I have been looking at that. I know that we've implemented an intervention period at the middle school levels for sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. So we've got to go back now and see what's going on at the sixth and seventh grade with those admin as soon as we can have our principals meeting with our middle of the year benchmark and dive into those students and see why we're not seeing that growth at sixth and seventh grade that we are in all other grade levels. So just to recap on our action steps, I know y'all are probably sick of hearing these. Our coaching, we have lots and lots of coaching, personalized coaching on SIBME. Then we have embedded support, K through 8 with Ashlock Reading. We've completed our book study, and we've also had tons of iReady trainings, and we did Ready, Read, Write earlier in the year. We had the Writing Revolution scheduled right after the flood, and we've had to cancel, but we will get that up and going. And we've had a huge focus on putting science and social studies back with writing and comprehension in the classrooms. Lesson maps prioritized to meet the standards, and so that takes place in all of our elementary classrooms. Principals are using SIBME to do video walkthroughs instead of just paper pencil walkthroughs, teachers being able to see themselves just like the NFL watch themselves on tape to get better. We're working on the best practice library where we're recording our teachers doing great things. And then again, we have the State Department. We have a group called the Page Turners, and we meet monthly with the state to figure out best practices and how we can improve. Again, we will have the Writing Revolution. We had about 82 teachers signed up for February the 21st, that weekend. We were so excited about that conference, but we've got everything on hold, and we're trying to find another weekend to put that back in. So now we'll go to math, and here's our growth from diagnostic 1 to 2, so you can just kind of look at the color bands. We went from 5 to 15% in mathematics for on grade level, went from 42 to 43% for tier 2. We reduced 10% in tier 3, so we pushed them down, so that was great, but we're still far away from that small tip in the red. So here's our growth in our overall domains. This summer, we have training already scheduled to math academies focusing on geometry and fractions, from drilling down and looking at the standards. So we focus 3 weeks or 3 sessions for teachers focused just on geometry and algebraic thinking and fractions. And here's our growth from diagnostic 1 to 2, just kind of that same band. Green is on level, and then the green railroad tracks are mid or above grade level, so those students have surpassed their mid-year mark. The red railroad tracks are 3 or more grade levels below. So right now we're sitting at 26% of our students, and that's K through 8, that are 3 or more years below. If you look at 1 grade level below, we're at 43%. So those students are what we used to call our bubble students, so those students that we just need to keep nudging and pushing to get over into the green. And we broke it down by grade level again. Kindergarten still leading. And here's our middle school. Again, not much growth at 6th and 7th grade. And then what are we doing in math? Of course, we have our coaching. And then we also this year put in content and Carnegie learning. So we have a new curriculum, so we need to help our teachers with the curriculum. So this is the first time we've really ever had continuous math training for teachers all year long with the new math curriculum. But we also hired Carnegie Learning through our federal dollars to support the teachers on math strategies that can be used with any curriculum. So that's been really the math curriculum part through Ready Math. That will go away after first year implementation, but we'll keep Carnegie Learning coaches as long as we can afford it. And then we do have our math cadre. We focus on process and content. And what do we need to do for our teachers? What's the research saying? Trying to bring that out to teachers. And then again, lots of iReady training, lots of training on our new curriculum. We have a group working together in the Riverview and Sandy River School collaboration, and then building more collaborative classrooms with our furniture packages and those pieces. So trying to think, how can we make math more collaborative? We bought everyone new manipulatives. We've been working on our mindset. We have to watch our words with math. We have to make sure that we don't use the words like I hate math. We have to be excited about math just like we are with all other subjects. We talked about the walkthroughs and the best practice library, and again, we're meeting with the department regularly on what we can do to improve mathematics. Coming up this weekend, we have 68 teachers that will be participating. This guy's one of the best, and we've got teachers ready for a full weekend of building thinking classrooms, so making mathematics classrooms really engaging and not just doing worksheets and those kinds of things, one of the reasons that kids turn off to math. So we're excited about having that workshop this weekend. Any questions? Yeah.
The lines that you showed us, the diagnostics going across.
For math or for?
For math.
Uh-huh.
Well, actually for both.
Okay.
Do
This
you
one?
have those broken down for the individual schools?
Yeah, I do. Would you like me to get that for you?
I would love to have a copy of that. Thank
Let me
you.
write that down or I'll forget. I used to be able to remember stuff like that.
So what we're seeing in your presentation are averages of the schools, correct?
Those are everybody together, K through
Okay.
8.
I'd like to see them individual. Thank you.
Uh-huh. All right, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
I'll pull you up. Thank you. Gotcha.
Next on the agenda, or you want to go ahead?
We're good.
Okay. Is the overview of the RIF and transfer rules and guidelines and financial implications for the McDowell County Schools. Ms. Tanya White, Director of Human Resources, and Jana Kahn, Director of Finance.
So as they're getting ready, I asked Ms. Khan and Ms. White to give you an overview because we are in the midst of the personnel season, and those timelines are very, very strict. So whether it's flooding or fires or anything else, we have to abide by the timelines because they're imposed in the legislature. So we wanted to give you an overall presentation, just kind of seeing like what are the state aid formula numbers are telling us, what are the financial implications, so that you are as knowledgeable as you can be going to the season.
Good afternoon. Thank you for letting us just present this to you today. And I know some of you all, this is going to be just a repetitive information that you already know, but we're going to go through it anyway. Just some things to keep in mind. This is the general disclaimer. We're speaking in generalities. Any examples that we give are not specific to any situation that we're actually dealing with. Personnel season is not personal, although when it's you getting the letter, it feels really personal, but when we make these decisions, it is not. It's not just a time for reductions, it's also a time to make schedule changes or just maybe reformat a job that we think we could make it a little more suited to student needs, and we have to go through the process to do that. And making one change usually necessitates another. So and I'll go over that a little bit more later, but it's a lot like dominoes. So, you have seniority, you have certification, all those things factor in, and it's never usually just as simple as this one person's job needs to be eliminated or changed or something done to it during personnel season where it only affects that one person. Usually by touching that person, then there's someone less senior that we have to kind of touch and maybe pull out of their position for this person. So it's always one after another. And like I said, you're probably familiar with these, but this is just some of the terminology. Transfer, there will be a position for this person somewhere in the county. At the time that they're receiving their letters, I'm usually unable to tell them where it's going to be because there's just too many moving pieces at that time. So it takes a little while for all of that to be finalized. Oh, whoops. Reduction in force and RIF. These are the same things. You'll hear people call them rifted and things like that, but basically it just means that we've made a reduction in an area and that person is not going to have a position in the upcoming school term. Termination we have to do when they are a continuing contract employee, so they've worked with us for more than 3 years and they are fully certified. Preferred recall is what happens to them after they are terminated or non-renewed. The non-renewals are for employees who are either probationary because of their length of time worked, or they are probationary because they are on permit and working towards certification. So they will go on preferred recall, which is basically saying that they have not completely lost all of their seniority and they still retain all of that. When they get back on, they get that back too. Our current status, these are the numbers. It's collected from our October collections. Our current employees of professional are 227, 24 current vacancies, and then the staffing formula that the state does with these October collections, it'll let us know how many positions will be funded by the state formula. So that there's a bunch of different things that'll go into that, and I think Jana might be going over that. But what they found us to have is 7 professional positions in excess of what the formula calls for. Service, we have currently 157, 3 current vacancies, and we have 30 positions in excess of formula.
Okay, as we head into our budgeting season, it's very important that personnel and finance work very closely together because, as you can see there, 80% of our general budget is personnel. So we really have to have our personnel numbers locked down. The way we go about doing that, the first step is to identify the full-time equivalency personnel. By doing that, we account for all personnel that are currently employed, and then we adjust for any changes as a result of RIF or transfer, and then we add in any new positions that we are anticipating. And then we also have to update payroll data to reflect salary increases and PEIA rates, because it's not just salary that we're budgeting, but it's also the benefits and fringe that go along with that. I gave you all a copy of our preliminary comps from the State Department, and this is what we call our state aid funding. The preliminary comps are provided to us from the department, and it includes state aid, retirement, and PEIA allocations. The state aid uses enrollment and employment data from the second month of the school year that is provided by the county. So every October, we provide that to the department. And the key thing, which I'll talk about again here in a second, is the student enrollment plays a huge part in how much state aid we receive. FTE are funded at the calculated level that is required and not the number of personnel employed. And the state statute defines how state allowances are calculated. Factors that impact the personnel budget. Like I said, the loss of student enrollment is huge because that determines how much we're going to get overall. So if we lose any students, we're losing money with that. Also, salary increases as determined by the West Virginia legislature. We have to account for those, and the rising cost of PEIA, as well as any other benefits and retirement that we provide with the salary package. And then I gave you all a copy of this Excel spreadsheet. And so this shows the professional in yellow and the service in pink. But just like Ms. White said, we are currently 7 out of formula. And so based on an average professional position of $71,000, now that includes the salary plus the benefits to go with it. If we were to carry that amount of employees based on that average salary, it would cost the county $496,000, and that's just for the professional. For the service, we're right at 30 out of formula, and the average service cost, salary and benefits is $44,000. So to carry all of those that are out of formula, it would be $1.3 million for the county.
Okay, so that means we have a lot of decisions that we have to make. And there's only one period of time that we can make these decisions. So we can only do this from March to May each year, which makes it a little difficult because we're working on information that's projected that we don't even have. We haven't had all of the enrollment for pre-K and K yet. So there's a lot of things that can fluctuate. But we try to do our best guess, and this is the only time we're allowed to do it. So how do we decide? Enrollment, as we've been saying, is a large factor. Changes in educational requirements and course offerings. The legislature will determine that, like this personal finance, or any other course offerings that is now a requirement. So when they do, we have to go and make sure we have someone that can teach that. Are we able to sustain the position? Especially if it is grant funded or federally funded, if that money is scheduled to expire, then we need to figure out, are we going to be able to pick that up on the county, or how will we fund that position? And again, enrollment. This is our trend since the 1920 school term. And you can see it's obviously trending down. And we can probably project that we're going to have that continue, especially with the recent flooding. So that's probably going to be more of the same. Transfers. These occur, like I said, when there's a necessity to change an employee's worksite schedule, duties. We always look at the position first, not the person. Seniority and certification, they are really considered heavily in this position, or in this process rather. Is there a need to displace another employee in order to make this change happen? And these are always the most contested. You'll find 9 times out of 10, if you have a personnel hearing, it's because someone got a transfer, not because they are not going to have a job the next year. Reductions in force. These are terminations, actions by the board to terminate an employee's contract at the end of the school year. And I went over the non-renewals. This is for a probationary contract. They usually happen because the employee does not have the seniority and sometimes certification to retain a position and are being displaced by another more senior employee. So what about all the vacancies? This is the question that gets asked probably the most, especially by people who maybe aren't really familiar with how school law works. Yes, we have several vacancies, as you've already seen. A lot of them, the majority of them, are in special education. There's some elementary, there's other hard to fill. You got your math, sometimes English, other subject areas. We try to cut the vacant positions as much as possible. If it's a position that we've deemed we could maybe do without, then we try to pull it from there, because that's not going to affect our staff. Those are the ones that we had a substitute in. If we can take it there, then it's less impact. The certification is specific to the type of position. So if you're certified in elementary, but you don't have special ed certification, then it's not as simple as you're not going to be in elementary anymore, you're just going to go teach special ed. So that doesn't really work. And then we always get talks about, couldn't these reductions be made at the central office? Are you top heavy at the central office? And actually, we've already made several reductions. We've lost 2 central office secretaries. We did not replace an associate superintendent. We've lost a director. Every time that someone leaves, or we've determined, that maybe we could do without that position, we tend to divvy up the duties and everybody just takes on more. So we've been doing that for years. And that's something that we will continue to do. We always scrutinize it closely to make sure that we're doing what we should do and we're fiscally responsible here. So personnel season is never easy. But imagine what would happen if we didn't make these yearly adjustments. So the law clearly dictates how reductions are to be made. And like I said, this tends to create a domino effect. So if you hear an employee who has asked for a hearing, and I gave an example, employee A has 5 years of seniority. They get a transfer due to loss of enrollment. We just don't need that classroom at all anymore. And then employee B has 1 year, gets a non-renewal letter because their job is needed as a destination for employee A to land. They ask for a hearing, and out of the goodness of your heart, you decide you are not going to cut her contract, which means not only are you keeping employee B, but you're also going to have to keep employee A now in the same position because you didn't make a spot for her to go. And this is just one example, and sometimes it's more than one spot. Sometimes it'll affect 3 people, because it trickles down. So, one change does not simply mean that's the only thing that has to be undone. We have to go back and look at everything again.
And that's sometimes when you will see us going out and doing letters, like we might say, we're trying to get those 7 positions eliminated through the RIF and transfer process to be able to be flush with what the state aid formula says, which you might end up affecting a lot more people. And sometimes people don't connect that because that person was displaced because somebody else 5 times removed was affected, and it was the primary position that was affected. So that's why Renee and Tanya they're working a lot now just to be able to look at the position and follow all the laws, that who you can bump into and who you can't and how you need to do that. So you will end up with a lot more people on the list by May 1st that you will have to approve than what we initially said, that you have those 7 people, because bumps become very complicated and complex. So just wanted to inject that.
If I may.
Mhm.
Okay, so you're telling us we're 7 professional over, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and we have 6 resignations coming up here in a little bit. Are those factored into that already, or will they be factored in?
It is factored in after the fact. It's not factored into the overage because that comes straight from the state.
Okay.
So what we do with it after that, and those will be factored in our actions, not in the state computations.
Yeah, a lot of times we hear that we don't lose positions because of retirements and attritions and whatnot. So
Right.
that will factor in.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
We try to touch as few people as possible.
Right. Okay.
Any other
And-
questions?
And I wanted to say that's why we have the early retirement notification with the deadline of March 1st, so that when we get this and the board approves, then when Ms. White goes and looks at the bumps, so if there are some of these that we can use not to displace people, then we'll use it. So like there are sometimes, like we have to, this person would not be needed, their position would bump somebody else, but what if that person retires or resigns? Then we don't have to affect somebody else. So we always try and look at how can we affect the least people possible, because it is a loss of livelihood, it is very emotional, very personal time, and all of us experienced that. All of us got that RIF letter, and it was not the best of the situations. So we try to do as much as we can not to affect this as much as we could. But like when you look at the expenses that the county has, and we incur expenses with service every single year, just because the formula for service personnel is quite outdated and it needs a lot of work. But when we cut service, plus you cut service and you add ECATs, because that House Bill 3035 will be adding more ECATs to the 3rd grade next year. So that number that you are seeing, that probably will be right around that. So that's the expense that we have to carry, because like bus drivers have to go to those places that they have to reach, and so we have to, those are the positions that we have to have. And buildings, the square footage does not get any smaller. So with service, like this is the cost that the county incurs every single year.
Ms. Kahn, could you give me a little more information on what an FTE is?
Yes, that stands for full-time equivalency employee, and
Okay.
basically it's just full-time status.
Okay, so there's a full-time teacher.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there such a thing in the service personnel?
Yes.
Okay, so looking at the retirements, obviously that's not going to help us in our overage there, but we still have to have those aid positions, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And is that what's probably driving this overage?
It's a big part of it, yes.
Unfunded mandate from the state then?
Right.
Right, okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No other questions? You did a good job. Thank you.
Yes, very good.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the school year 25-26 school calendar public input. So do we have input? She's doing it, okay.
So this is the second public input meeting, and we have to have those by law. So at this point, we did not have anybody sign up to provide input. Ms. Payton, do you want to update the board on what the next steps are for the calendar?
Yeah, so tomorrow we will have our second calendar team meeting, and then we've presented them with we have one team meeting where we talk about our needs as a district. We look at attendance on some of those days from this current school year. So next steps, now that we've not received any, we did have 2 legal public hearings. We'll come back, we'll take a look at the calendars, and then we will get those ready for McDowell County School staff to have an input vote they're not giving the final vote. We just always let the staff provide us input. So they'll vote on Thursday and Friday this week, and then we'll meet as a team again, review those votes, and then we'll present to the board on the second March meeting.
17th.
17th. We'll present to you all which calendar we would like for you to consider for approval. And after the board approves that calendar, it's not yet approved, we have to send it to the state for final approval. Then we'll be ready for 25, 26.
And with all the floods and people being in and out of the office, because whenever we work on a calendar to present some options after the committee provides the input, we also have to look at the financial side and the pay periods and when you have the calendar starting, how it will affect the pay periods. So we really work closely with Ms. Mullins so that so we don't mess up the pay periods, because there is quite a bit of a science towards that. So we had to change things throughout the last 2 weeks just because we had to make sure that financial side is good.
Did the flood affect the proposed date or the date that you had for the public hearings? Good.
Now, that one we try to keep
Yeah.
and not change.
Very good.
Yeah.
Next on the agenda is personnel agenda. And you've got your copy of the additions, it's on there, so we have a motion to approve the personnel agenda. Motion by Larkin, second by Margaret. Do you have any questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And one absent. The next item is a volunteer agenda. Do you have a motion to approve the volunteer agenda? Motion by Margaret, second by, I'll second it. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Next item on the agenda is the finance allowed and authorization payment of bills and budget revisions. Invoices presented for payment are available in the finance office during normal business hours. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Okay. Larkin and Ed, second. Okay, any discussions or do you have any questions concerning the finances? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, next we have the action items. Number one is approval of the 2024-25 Riverview High School tennis schedule. Number two is approval of the 24-25 Riverview High School senior softball schedule. And three is approval of the 24-25 Sandy River Middle School baseball schedule. And number four is approval of the 24-25 Sandy River Middle School softball schedule. Number five, approval of 24-25 Southside K through 8 middle junior softball schedule. And number six is approval of 24-25 Southside K through 8 middle junior baseball schedule. And you want to take number 1 through 6 because we're going to take out number 7, and that is the baseball schedules and softball schedules, and 7 through 11 is going to be the student trip request. So if we would do 1 through 7, 6, I'm sorry, 1 through 6. Do we have a motion to approve 1 through 6? Okay, we have a motion second. Any discussion or questions that you have? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, we're going to strike number 7, and then we're going to have number 8, the approval of the trip request to Bluefield High School from Mountview High School. 9 through 12 boys basketball game, February the 27th. Number 9 is approval of student trip request, Bluefield High School, Mount View High School, grades 9 through 12 girls basketball game, sectionals, February the 28th. And 10 is student trip request, Bluefield State University, Mount View High School, 9 through 12 boys high school basketball game, sectionals, March the 7th. And number 11, approval of student trip request for Concord College, Riverview High School, grades 9 through 12, upward bound, Saturday session, March the 22nd, 2025. So if we would have a motion, we'll take number 8 through 11. Motion by Margaret. Second by,
I'll second.
okay, any discussion, you have any questions or comments on that? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next is the superintendent update.
So as I've told you in the email and you saw on social media, our planned date to come back to have the students come back to school is March 10th. Our teachers are back in school. They have been doing professional development, and they're also after school hours, and some do it during school hours. They're going to do home visits. We are prioritizing the families that got affected by floods, just to make sure that we are really personally checking in with them, making sure that we see what their needs are to be able to get them back to school. We have submitted a preliminary request to waive some instructional days to the State Department. So they were meeting internally, I think today or tomorrow, so they would let us know if that would be approved. So once we get that, I don't want to get people's hopes high until they tell us yay or nay, but we are really working hard to make sure that we make some changes in calendar to maximize instructional time, but also not go into the end of June, because we understand that we need to make sure we focus our instructional priorities and get our students in class and learning. Our state superintendent was here Wednesday, so Ms. Payton and I took her out across the county. We went to Colwood and Racel and Jolo and went to Yeager. So she saw the roads, she saw the communities, she met with people in school, she met with some of our teachers that got flooded out, and she also sent people from employees at the State Department, so they were volunteering in our shelters this weekend. So I worked with several at Mount View Saturday, and I know Amanda worked with some at Mount View yesterday, and I know we had some at Yeager, so they were really helping, because we did not want our people to work the shelters this weekend, because everybody's worked so many hours. We just wanted them to go home, because a lot of them still had to clean their homes out and focus on that. So we just said central office and volunteers will man the shelters so that you can get at least a little bit of a break. We have met with, Amanda and I have met with Mr. Chapman and Mr. Griggle Friday, because we want the students to be back, but we also want to make sure that the routes they're on are safe. And that's where we will do take a lot of time to look at the roads. So Will and Adam were on the roads yesterday and Saturday, traveling, seeing where would be the roads of where you would not go past. So we are meeting tomorrow to look at those routes, to look at the stops. So we talked about having regular routes. Then we also decided to have inclement weather routes for the snow days. So now we'll have the third layer of routes, the flood routes. We have promised the community that we'll release the flood routes on Wednesday, so we have to do a lot of work in between then and now and then to make sure we meet with the transportation and facilities directors, look at those stops, then they will meet with the bus drivers and make sure that we are good and safe. And then we will put those routes out, and our people are already calling, teachers and principals are calling some areas that are affected to make sure we have plans. My biggest concern is Bartley area because it has two big drops. I will not put the bus on that side just because it's unsafe. Until the State Department, the DOH, is able to contract and get that road safe, even though we have coal trucks flying on it, but when you have a bus with the kids, you have to take extra precautions. So we have outlined several scenarios with the schools, so we'll be calling and offering these scenarios to the students because, again, our priority is to have them in school or in some location in some campus and or offer them the other options such as virtual if we cannot or they cannot get to the bus stop that we have outlined as the safest, closest to that Bartley area break. So we don't have all the answers, but we are going to be getting some of the answers. But that's pretty much my most concerning point because of that break on that main route that I will not put the buses on it. So we have shelters operating this week, 8 to 4. As Ms. Payton said, we have math conference scheduled this week, and next weekend we have strategic planning. Our spring sports are starting on March 10th. As you know, that Riverview area fields have been decimated. Anything around them has been decimated. So I know Mr. Kennedy offered the schools on that side to use their fields here if they need to. And I spoke with Mr. Henry, the superintendent of Wyoming County, and he said that they will do anything that we need them to do to share their facilities. For many of our kids, sports is an outlet, so we want to make sure that we provide them with that outlet in the safest way possible. And that's why you see basketball season finishing up. Our students are playing in sectionals this week, and hopefully some of them will make it to the state. We also had one student from Riverview qualify for the state wrestling championship, so we would just want to make sure, tournament, we want to make sure we provide our students with those outlets. Also, we are also focusing on academic side. We moved our county social studies fair to March 20th. So we'll have it because students put a lot of work and effort into it, so we'll have to move it to Mount View because Armory is used for the emergency responders. So, but we will have it, so we have sent an email out to the principals, they'll be getting ready. We also were scheduled to give the Golden Horseshoe online test on March 12th, so I worked with the State Department to move that to March 25th. The latest one we could move it to so that we could give our students a little bit of time to get back in schools, to see how many we have, what we can do, because I really don't want our students to miss out on that opportunity for the Golden Horseshoe. So that's going to happen. We have given out Chromebooks. High schools were finishing up today, and we just wanted to give students time on Chromebooks to do iReady, to do Alex, to do SAT prep, so that they could get their skills refreshed. These assignments are not graded, they're just for them just to have something to do to make sure that they can start getting back into the swing of things, because general summative assessment window is not going to change. So we have to work within the confines of that state window to push our testing as far as we can so that our students have as much time as we possibly can give them to make sure they're prepared. But again, that testing is not going to wait on McDowell County. So that's all I have.
Question. Can you give us, we're going back to school on March 10th.
Correct.
Can you give us an idea of what that day is going to look like? I mean, if I was teaching fractions at the day before we got flooded, am I teaching fractions on the 10th?
So on the 10th, we'll most likely will start with a delay because we don't want the buses to be out on the roads in the dark because of the roads. So we'll have a shortened day on Monday. And that day, mostly we'll just have a day for the students to check in with teachers, to make sure we have supports, and just kind of have a celebration of coming back to school. Yeah. So that's what we want to do on Monday, because again, kids have gone through the trauma, our adults have gone through the trauma. We don't want to not recognize this. So we want to have that time. If they need to meet with a counselor or their favorite teacher and talk to them, that will allow for that time. Tuesday, and we are working on different ways to make sure our schedule allows for the light to be out when we have buses on the roads, just because if you have driven on the roads in the dark these days, it just, you get scared yourself. We want to make sure we confine ourselves to the light as much as we can. But yes, we will make sure that we are going to prioritize the standards. So if you are focusing on fractions, you will spend a bit of time trying to review, because we had a 3-week break at that time. So we are not going to start just plunging the students
Right,
into
good.
something unknown. So we are cognizant of the trauma they have experienced, but at the same time, we want to get them back into the routines, because I think for their own mental health and for our own mental health, we need to have some semblance of normalcy, just so that at least they can, if they're in school, they can spend some time just not thinking about what's going on.
Will all our schools have access to counselors when they come back?
Correct.
Because I can remember 202 flood, or the 02 flood, high school kids. Of course, we didn't get back in until the following fall. But every time it started raining, a thunderstorm outside, I had kids cry. So I can imagine, what the little ones,
Yeah.
But
Well, what we also have done, we have had the survey out so they could complete if they need the services or to talk to their counselor. So the counselors are already kind of compiling that list, and they will be checking on these kids before we even get into school. So we started on that, and we are working with Southern Highlands and KVC.
Good.
Just as, they're our partners anyways. So we are going to just keep on strengthening that relationship, because the need for the services, I think, will be greater than what we can, we anticipate. So we're going to make sure we have our bases covered.
Do you know what it would look like, like a schedule, if Riverview actually came to Mount View to practice? How that they would actually,
So what they'll do, they will look at the
How big is it?
schedule that already exists for the practices. So on there, when we have some holes in it, then they will be able to get that schedule filled in with if the school wants to come into the Mount View campus. Because Mr. Henry from Wyoming County said that they can offer different facilities, so it's not just one facility that, and I know have consolidated, or like Westside, they could offer stuff to our kids. So Mr. Lester has been working with middle school principals and high school principals. He is kind of acting like a point of contact, so that, for example, even if we say, well, we got rained out, we want to practice today, no, we already have a schedule. We already, we are going to respect that you asked for it and we had a hole in our schedule. You will respect your practice time. So Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Lester are going to work together so that you have Riverview area, which means you have Riverview, Southside, and Sandy River. So you have 3 schools that will need those practice facilities. So he's acting as a point of contact to make sure we have equal time and we don't just push out each other because somebody's game got canceled, or we want to do this. So we want to be as structured as we can be.
so would the board provide some transportation?
Yes.
For them to do
Yes.
that? Okay. All right, do we have any other questions? Hearing none, now the announcement of future meeting is March the 17th, 2025, here at the central office. And at this time, it is 5:59. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Ms. Beavers, second by Mr. Ripple. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
you need a social studies.